The Jesus Trilogy, Book 1, The Four Messiahs, Chapter 9. Thursday and Friday went faster for Joseph and Mary. No more confrontations with Hazen. He did learn that Barrick was in the hospital after telling doctors that he had tripped getting on his horse at home. Joseph, of course, knew better. He had heard a crack as the three hit the ground the night before. It must have been Barrick's ribs. They weren't his, he knew, and Shimei had landed on top of the pile. Served the little runt right. Joseph bit his tongue. He wasn't supposed to think that way. Bad example. His own number two son already displayed a bad temper along with a build similar to Joseph's. He could out-wrestle his brother, who was the more studious type. Jed had tried to teach Joseph a new game, chess it was called. It was Greek to Joseph, but Jed was a whiz, married too. Joseph was constantly amazed by the differences in his children. How wonderful God was to create each one differently, yet make them all so special. Mary was exhausted by Friday. Never had she had such a draining week, even during finals when she had to study night and day in order to ace out Joanna. She made a quick supper and left it warming. She went out to where Joseph was working and said, "Would you mind if I left early? Supper is ready." "Sure, go ahead," Joseph said. "Anything I can do for you, Mary?" She turned away, but then looked quickly back. "We need to talk about the job, or my job. I'm working all day Sunday here. Got to get things cleaned up. Started Barnes Monday. I hope it will work out for you. Full time, I mean." "We'll talk Sunday," Mary said, and quickly slipped through the door and ran down the path, tears welling in her eyes. What could she do? She was in a terrible mess. No one to talk to and no father for this baby. She suddenly felt a wave of nausea. "Oh no," she thought, "I can't throw up here." Somehow she suppressed the reflex and hurried on. As she walked, she felt more and more depressed and more boxed in. She had to help Joseph, yet she had other job obligations. Her other job was important too. Didn't Joseph realize that? She had really wanted to go to the university, and now she was pregnant. She was nauseous, her breasts hurt, her head ached. Everyone would think Joseph was the father once her secret got out. The trap was tightening. Joseph and she had never shown even 1 ounce of affection for each other. She had felt this way once before, just after graduation, when she should have been the happiest person in the world. She was valedictorian of her class with a bright future ahead of her, but instead she went into a terrible depression. Josiah, her high school love, had kissed her only once when he let her off at home on prom night. He had signed her yearbook to "the smartest girl I know, love Joe." She cried and cried. She knew it was over. Joe was off to Jerusalem, and she was off to work in North Nazareth. Life was so unfair, and she prayed. Why didn't God hear her? One night she came to the crossroads. She seriously contemplated taking her own life. She'd gotten a razor blade from the drugstore, but try as she might, she just couldn't bring herself to make the cut in her wrists. She even felt more failure at her inability to cut them. She cried and cried, then tried to pray again. "Dear God, please forgive me. I'll try to go on and do whatever you ask, but please help me. I don't know where to turn." She wasn't sure if that prayer was heard or not. God probably thought her a terrible person. He no doubt thought her insincere. Look what she had just tried to do. Now she was spiraling back into the same depression again. Where was someone to talk to? Someone who could help her? She cooked supper for her mother and went straight to bed. She was exhausted. Tomorrow would be better. It had to be. Mary was asleep before her head hit the pillow. Church the next day was a disaster. The regular priest Vilnor had to go up to Judah above the East Hills. Apparently Zacharias, the old priest there, had been taken ill, and Vilnor had to fill in. The student Eliakim had to substitute for Vilnor. Mary couldn't place him at first, but then remembered him from school. He was 3 years ahead of her. He was now attending the seminary in Bethel and was nearly finished. As the sermon dragged on, Mary began to wonder what had happened to old Zacharias, her cousin-in-law. And how was her cousin Elizabeth? Why couldn't her cousin Elizabeth be the one to have this baby? Mary smiled. How ironic. And whose baby was this anyway? The blue-eyed angel had been vague. She decided to ask Eliakim, the new young priest, about Zacharias. She caught him as he was stepping out the door of the church. A stroke or something, Eliakim said. Mary, Mary, a loud voice came from behind her, and someone grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. How are you? It was Joanna. You look great. How have you been? Joanna was dressed to the usual hilt. Gold earrings, black pearl necklace, and a beautiful white dress low cut in her favorite mode. Doing good. How's school? Mary was not really happy, but was happy to see Joanna. It's wonderful. You should see all the boys and the parties. The teachers are great. You must come for a visit sometime. Joanna really didn't mean it. I'll do that. Mary smiled, not meaning it either. The party we had last week was grand. The prince was there. They said he was Castor, the son of a Roman governor. Did you ever see Josiah? Mary asked. All the time. We're in several classes together. Is he playing football? Mary's curiosity showed. I think so. Can you believe it? A prince? He actually kissed my hand. Mary was relieved to assume that Josiah and Joanna were not dating, but Josiah wouldn't want a pregnant girlfriend. Joanna sensed Mary still had a crush on the guy. Josiah says he dates a different girl each week. You better be careful or he'll soon be a father. Joanna had pushed the right button. Mary's heart sank. Down, down, down. Why couldn't Josiah be the father of this baby? I'm just here for the weekend, having some friends over. Drop by tonight if you can, Joanna said casually. I gotta work, Mary said, which was true. Both Mary and Joanna were thankful of that. See you. Mary squeezed her hands. Despite their differences, there still was an undercurrent of friendship between the two. Always had been, always would be. Good luck, Mary, Joanna said as she turned to go. Mary did need some luck. Mary had to close the market down. Joseph didn't need her today. She wondered idly, why didn't that man date? He has such great looks, 3 kids, though that was a turn-off. Her mind was wandering aimlessly. It was totally frayed. The sun set at 6, a beautiful one. It was pink, purple, red, orange. It relaxed her a little. The sun always came up and then set. She knew this was a daily promise from God. There must be a way out of this mess, but so far she couldn't see even a flicker of light at the other end of the tunnel. Her nausea was worse in the morning. She took off quickly to get to the market, which stayed open until 9 p.m. on Saturday nights. Mary hugged her mother as she left the house for the market. Her mother sensed something was troubling her daughter, but hadn't asked her about it yet. There would be a right time. There always was. The two women understood each other, but were not close. In fact, Mary felt closer to her father, who wasn't even alive. She felt guilty about this, but didn't know what to do about it. She had to let it slide for now. One of these days she would confide in her mother. It had to be done before someone else told her. It had to be done before her mother noticed the telltale bulge that would soon be forming. Mary figured she had a couple of months before she would have to face that dreaded task. One reason she kept this market job was that she got half off anything she bought there. It was not a big store. The new one up the street was a lot nicer, but this was okay and was still fairly busy. And that 50% discount really helped. She checked a few customers, and before she knew it, 9 o'clock had rolled around. She would balance the till, put the money in the safe, and close the store. Aram ran a tight ship, but had complete trust in Mary. She locked up, closed the door, and headed off down the road. She now remembered the party of Joanna's she had decided not to attend, but did want to go by and just check the guests out from a distance. Joanna's mother, Gloria, was going going to a play in the town center, and her father, Geron, who traveled a lot, was out of town. Mary walked down the street and saw Gloria on the street corner with someone Mary didn't know. He was a big man. He looked like a man from the patrol, a soldier perhaps. They were both laughing, and the soldier had his arm around Gloria's waist. Then he leaned over and kissed her. Mary had heard rumors, but this was not a rumor. This was happening right before Mary's eyes. She turned to go the other way, but it was too late. Gloria turned and saw her. Their eyes met. Mary took off up the street. She would say nothing. It wasn't her business. She was still curious about the party, though, so she circled around the next block and came up near Joanna's door. Mary was never very sly, and some guy saw her. He came out on the porch to take a closer look, but she could tell he was less than impressed with her and her looks. Is Joanna here? Mary couldn't believe what she had just said. I'll check. Who shall I say is calling? Mary, she said. A minute later she heard gales of laughter coming from inside the house. Finally he came back out. She says she doesn't know any Mary. More laughter. Thanks, she said. Sorry. She turned and went down the street toward home. She was half mad, but also half sad. Whatever, she said aloud to herself. She'll probably get busted anyway, Mary thought. As she walked further down the street, she realized there were no worse than she, an unwed teenage mother. Well, mother-to-be. She could keep that quiet, but the Monday paper, the Nazareth Gazette, would give a full description of the bust at Joanna's home.